Despite all the mistakes made and money lost, the overall belief still, like always, is that the video games industry wants to keep raising the prices of games at release, and it's never not going to be annoying. So I want to talk about what's being said about this, and how even indie games have now become so insanely profitable they're starting to eat into the overall market share, and how the end of free-to-play games is upon us depending on who you ask, but let's get into it. So this began with this article from esportsbet.com where Greg Raisdorf, who's the former creative director on past Call of Duty games, was interviewed for, well, all manner of things. Greg worked on Call of Duty games like Advanced Warfare, World War II, and Black Ops Cold War, some polarizing titles in the series depending on who you ask. I actually really enjoyed Cold War myself, but anyways, most of the interview is about Greg's start in the industry and making his own studio. Eventually, though, we get to a part where the interviewer then asks Greg about the underlying belief that the AAA industry is just hell-bent on raising the prices of games to $100 American at launch. This does not include special editions, by the way. We're talking basic, normal releases. The interviewer then asked this: while we're talking about the business models behind gaming today and how smaller teams can monetize their work, where do you stand on the looming idea of the $100 price tag for games in the AAA space? Greg would then reply, "It is economics at that point. The expectations are so high for those games. A Call of Duty is at least 4 games in one. You have Call of Duty Zombies, the campaign, which is huge, the multiplayer, usually there's something else, and then there's Warzone as well. Warzone's free, which is interesting that that's still a thing that's free and available to play. We've seen a huge uptick in free-to-play games, and free-to-play games come and go. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars on releasing them and then die the next day," Greg continues. "It's much more interesting to have a premium game with a light microtransaction offering rather than free-to-play. I think free-to-play is probably going to go away, not complete, but become more like those UGC platforms like Roblox or Fortnite. A $100 game is going to happen eventually. You just don't want to be the first person to do it. All the publishers are waiting. The Outer Worlds got tagged with the $80 price tag and they didn't even know it. I'm sure Grand Theft Auto 6 could do it and they would still do gangbusters, and everyone would still be excited about it because it will be quality. You get what you pay for, right? GTA Online is huge too, with all those servers and everything else that's running it on the customer side, which has serious costs to keep going." Greg then, as seen here, states that he genuinely believes that GTA 6 will absolutely release at $100 USD. And he also believes that this will have massive shockwaves in the industry because not only will GTA 6 sell regardless, he's right by the way, but it will also then embolden the rest of AAA to go, well, if Rockstar can get away with $100 USD for standard releases, why can't we? It's a slippery slope, I gotta admit. Again, since Greg said, based on what he knows working on Call of Duty for years, that all of the publishers and the industry titans are all pretty much salivating at the mouth to charge you through the nose to buy games at now $100 USD, dude. What's nuts is that in Canada, where I unfortunately live, $100 USD is about $143 right now based on inflation. Nintendo games already retail in varying costs here too. Super Mario Galaxy Remaster 1 and 2 is $100 Canadian. Tears of the Kingdom on Switch 2 is $115 before taxes, so more like $120 at least. It's even more money if you live on the eastern coast of Canada where taxes are much higher in, say, Ontario. Feasibly, this is not going to work if you ask me, because already we know most players barely buy even a few new games a year, never mind all of the time. Rent is expensive for many, mortgages too if you somehow own your own home, which is not as common as say 20 years ago, we all know that already too. Your food is really expensive, help, you need to keep money in savings in case you have like any sort of emergencies too. They say most people in the modern world are somewhere about like a paycheck away from just losing it all, and I believe it, and it's really sad. I think the industry is just completely out of touch with the common player, and they are going to, screw around and find out the hard way if they think that anybody is somehow going to be happy with $100 day one game somehow. What would this mean for like your special editions then? 140 USD maybe? That's like basically $200 Canadian. You're just asking for your game to fail and for studios to shut down at that point, because that's what's going to happen. Since the conversation here was mostly about Call of Duty, since that's what Greg is obviously known for, the interviewer then asked a follow-up question which reads, "Does the release schedule of Call of Duty make it it harder to ask players to pay $100 every year or even every other year compared to Grand Theft Auto, that at this point takes a decade or more to release. A totally valid question if you ask me, but here's what Greg had to say about it. Once you do it once and stick a $100 price tag on your game, it's just going to go up across the industry. Other games will follow. I don't think Call of Duty will be the first one to do it, but at some point the market demands it. Your investors are going to be asking, why haven't you done this? And the cost to create these games are super high. Sometimes I think I would love to go and make a game, but I look at the budgets needed and think I'd have to get so much investment, or I'd have to get a lot of people to work for nothing. The quality art directors and map designers and all those people that I know aren't going to work for peanuts. I understand that obviously people won't work for peanuts, as Greg just said, but the reality is, come on, we're seeing that this way of making games is not working. We already had Activision admit and confirm that they would never double down on one sub-franchise in Call of Duty ever again, like they did with Black Ops 7 for good reason, because it didn't sell. Black Ops 7 is already like 50% off everywhere because the game has obviously failed to meet the expectations of both Activision or Microsoft. And yeah, as someone who reviewed that game for the channel, it's just more of the same. The reality is that you can try to maybe guilt trip the paying customer all you want, claim you need to pay $100 yourself so that like the art director or the map designer, as Greg says, gets paid equally or what they're worth. But that doesn't work in like an economy where, as I said, the majority of people are maybe like a paycheck or two away from homelessness. Everyone has their own problems and things to deal with. You all do. I know everyone watching here has some problems they're dealing with. I understand that. Some people even take care of their loved ones who are sick too. In America, you guys over there watching this, you better pray you never go to the hospital due to how expensive that can be too. When you're worried about paying your rent, making sure the fridge has food and your kids are good or your pets are okay too, God forbid they get sick, which is expensive too. Trust me, I would know. Do you really think the common player, customer, whatever, is going to care if the art director isn't being paid enough to make a game? We gotta be honest, guys. Probably not. People don't necessarily care how things get made as long as it's not like, slave labor or something, I guess. But generally speaking, it's not up to you or me to care how much someone makes to develop gameplay in a game or say like a map pack. It's like a restaurant. You can try to guilt trip the customer by saying you have no idea how hard it was to cut this steak and age it with all the spices and ship it all the way from where it comes, how expensive these potatoes are to buy, or how the dressing for this salad is so complicated to make. At the end of the day, they're going to look at your menu, see the price tag range somewhere in the way too high to "are you crazy with these prices" range, and then they're just going to get up out of their seat and just walk right out of your restaurant. And it's the same with games. Hell, even YouTube content. There's no point in me crying to any viewer saying you have no idea how much goes into making a video. It doesn't matter. That's not something they need to worry about. If you are making something meant to be consumed, may it be a game, food, content, whatever else, you have to come to terms with the fact that you cannot expect the customer base to suddenly sympathize or care with your problems, because as cold as it sounds, it's just not their problem, is it? It's like with movies. Look how expensive it is to go to the movies these days. I don't even mean just the tickets. Never mind that. If you actually want to like buy a drink and some popcorn, dude, you're paying through the nose for it. Candy? Don't even get me started. No wonder the vast majority of people tend to just like stay home, and why movies are coming to streaming services faster than ever before. It's because it's cheaper to just wait and eat your own popcorn and drinks or whatever else you have in your fridge than go to a movie theater and get charged like $5 to $7 for like a cup that you then fill up with some pop in it. It's just absurd. Like, things are changing. Yes, you may not like all the changes that are shifting, but it is what it is, isn't it? Like, right, personally, there's not many games I can think of where I truly believe that $100 price tag is ever going to be justified by anybody. For a deluxe edition of a game, okay, maybe I would pay for collectors too, but obviously I'm not just getting the game then. Well, it depends on the game. Even some collector's editions don't even have the game in them, and that's insane. But if I'm getting like a statue and patches for a jacket and DLC content and whatever else, that helps justify it more, right? But if we're just talking for like the game, like the base game, are you guys crazy? Especially for Call of Duty. There's no way I'm paying $100 for Modern Warfare 4 or Black Ops 6. Just wait 2 or 3 months. They're gonna slash these prices like they always do anyways. I'm not even sorry about that. It's just not realistic. Now let's shift gears for a bit so that I can prove to you that the actual games making money are in fact neither free to play or whatever Greg was saying about $100 games being the new meta. meta. As Alinea Analytics said in their end-of-year newsletter, here it is on screen by the way, anyways, Alinea Analytics then showed the most played games of the year top 15 anyways on Steam, as you can see here. Battlefield 6 unsurprisingly reigned supreme, that's a premium title obviously. Second was Skate, if you can believe, which was free to play, and apparently still pulls in around 750,000 daily users a day across all platforms. Then you had indie titles like Repo or Peak, some sports titles here or there, then a whole bunch of indie games and AA offerings with like the one single remaster in Oblivion 2. Another thing to note in this graph is that the grayish purple parts of each graph is players on Steam. So as you can see, the Steam engagement, it eclipsed every other platform in terms of these top 15 games by a very large margin. You'll also likely have noticed a large amount of games in the top 15 most played had another thing in common. Most of them weren't AAA full-price video games. Arc Raiders, Clair Obscur, Repo, Schedule 1, Silksong, Rematch, etc., etc. They're all indie or AA games. They are also not $70 or like $80 at release, or of course these lists do also exclude Nintendo games, I know, because Nintendo is obviously its own segregated ecosystem, so that should be taken into account here too. But on Steam alone, Alinea claims about 20,000 games or so were released on that platform in 2025. And of those 20,000 games, only about 300 of them generated more than $1 million in sales in 2025. So yes, the competition is fierce, clearly, I know that. Either way, in total, Steam alone generated somewhere near $17.7 billion in total sales in 2025. A massive number, I know. Here's a graph showing how Steam has grown in price year over year overall too. Comparing 2024 to 25, this means that Steam's overall performance has actually increased by around 15% or so. But the other very, very interesting data find in this package is that of that $17.7 billion, about 25% of that came from indie games alone, which is absolutely nuts. That's about $4.5 billion, by the way. And that actually is seen here. $500 million alone were made by just 5 indie games on Steam, as you can see there. Stuff like Silksong, Duck Off, and Schedule 1. Either way, that is absolutely nuts for the size of these games and who worked on it. We're talking incredibly small teams. Like, here's a nice graphic with all the indie games that made all that money, by the way, which is, again, like just mighty insanely impressive that a quarter of all the gross revenue came from games that cost nowhere near $100 at release. And this is what I mean when you compare the performance of these games to, say, a potential $100 Call of Duty or something else like that. The reality is that this sort of mentality, whether the industry wants to normalize it or not, is not exactly something people really want these days, or really ever, let's be honest. Is it really no surprise why Silksong sold the way it did? Yeah, because it's $20. Most people can afford and justify that price. The same reason why Schedule 1 made over $150 million in gross revenue while being made by a single guy, by the way. These sorts of games and more are what I would call the current meta, if you will, but there's that other group, you know, the AA games, for lack of a better term, I guess. I'm talking about the Arc Raiders and the Clair Obscurs, you know, games that are not small games by any means, but again, they retail for like $50 at release. The way Alinea Analytics splits this is between premium games, which are games that you pay for to play, obviously, and then we have the free-to-play games. Looking at this graph, now again encompassing just Steam, a staggering 78% of overall market share of games bought and played on Steam in 2025 were from premium games. That's everything, okay? Your Silksongs, your Arc Raiders, your Battlefield 6s, you name it, they're all in there. Regardless, this gap between the free-to-play and the premium titles is actually shrinking, which is kind of weird, isn't it? Like, what do you mean that free-to-play games are not making up the bulk of the pie anymore? Like, what gives? It's as Alinea says in their own article at various points, and also what Greg said in that interview earlier in the video, that the days of free-to-play games are not being as widely accepted compared to premium titles anymore these days. It's becoming very clear that players are actually more willing to buy a game for, say, $50 in Arc Raiders, or playing a free-to-play game, which will inevitably instead, you know, make them probably spend like $100 in the same period to enjoy it too. Even Greg said during that interview, as seen here, that based on what he knows with Call of Duty and others behind the scenes, that the more interesting and acceptable idea now is to have a premium game, something you buy obviously, but with light monetization monetization, like whatever that means, I guess, over free to play now. As we all know, Arc Raiders has exploded, and it's still exploding. People are playing that game like crazy, and then Marathon comes out in 2026. And Bungie has since, according to them anyways, fixed a lot of the problems with Marathon, and it too is another extraction shooter that is launching at half the price of a AAA game. And who knows, it could be a big release. We don't know yet. But this is my opinion. This is the new meta, okay? People are much more inclined to buy into your game if you're not threatening their wallets anymore. You know what I mean? It's far more palpable to play Arc Raiders and enjoy that for hundreds of hours over, say, a potential $100 Call of Duty game that will also, ask you to buy the battle pass, have bundles and whatever, and expect you to pay for the future season battle passes too for more money as well. Even Helldivers has both free mini battle passes and the paid ones too, but these can be obtained by playing the game either way by just grinding and playing the game. Regardless, I don't need to tell you that Helldivers 2 is also not a fully priced video game, and look how well it did in 2024 and continues to soar in 2025 even. This mentality of, no, you guys need to accept $100 games is just never really going to work, guys. Come on, the only way this would be normalized is if, like, every society in the world just suddenly out of nowhere saw a massive surge and boost in financials. Like, everyone who makes, I don't know, $20 an hour suddenly now makes something like $50 an hour, but somehow that doesn't also just raise everything up in price, which is impossible. Obviously, that's inflation, so it's just never going to happen. These games they will just die, okay, before they even get started. If anyone over there believes that their games will be the ones to normalize $100 at release, like the only game, in my opinion, that could do this, okay, maybe 3 game franchises at best. All right, one is GTA 6 because come on, it's GTA 6. The other is whatever the next Zelda main series game is for Switch 2, and finally, maybe possibly an Elden Ring 2 or something like that. Anything else believing that they could somehow convince millions of players, hey, you definitely want to buy our game for $100 at release, you are crazy. You're gonna close down. You're gonna have mass layoffs too. My opinion and advice is very, very simple. Just stop while you're ahead and pivot your trajectory towards the far more palpable and profitable $40 to $50 range for your games instead. Sure, it means your game doesn't have to be as expansive, which is actually good for workload, but also for people to buy into it too. Ensure that your gameplay loop is addicting and realistically that you can repeat that fun forever, because that's actually the golden rule that the original Bungie developer spoke about back when they made Halo Combat Evolved. Bungie's whole design philosophy back then was if you can make a compelling 30-second gameplay loop, that's genuinely all that matters. You can be doing anything else in these games as long as that gameplay is fun and addicting and that loop works. That's it, right? Look at Arc Raiders. Realistically, what are you doing in that game? You're collecting junk, you're shooting robots, and you're fighting other raiders, right? Technically, on paper, that's not very complicated. It sounds simple, and yes, it is. But boy, is it fun to do, right? Because that's all you need. There's a reason why phrases like return to basics always ring true. Even like with music, most of the music people love the most is just simple and easy to understand. You don't need to do too much. As long as, like Bungie said 25 years ago or so, that 30-second gameplay loop is rock solid, and games like Arc Raiders, they have that loop. Helldivers has that loop. Dark Souls and Elden Ring, they have that as well. I mean, even realistically, Call of Duty, the one thing that has kept that series alive, like justifiably for so long, despite all of its problems and monetization slop, is because, let's be real, that addicting 30-second loop of gameplay. Arguably, Call of Duty has one of the best gameplay mechanical loops in like the histories of games. Like, that can't even be denied. You run, you turn a corner, you shoot a guy, or he shoots you. You reload, you shoot another guy, eventually maybe you activate a kill streak or something. The dopamine is hitting your brain like crazy. The loop then resets. You see a guy again, you shoot him or he hits you. You maybe get shot, so you immediately smash the button to respawn. Game loop resets, rinse and repeat for hundreds of hours across multiple games, eras again and again and again, until we all just pass away and the sun blows up one day. But that's all that really matters, isn't it? What I think these game developers and publishers, especially in AAA, are more worried about is ensuring that their games have the best graphics. Look, we have this prolific actor that was like on Netflix or something to pull people in, or multiple modes that somehow justify these ballooning budgets and laughable prices. But really, what was the indie games and AA ones are proving again and again by selling what they sold is that none of that really matters, does it? Games will always be about the gameplay, go figure. Remind me again how many people people are still playing Counter-Strike 2 or even Team Fortress 2, no matter how many other games come out around it. How many people are playing that banana game on Steam as we speak? Like, why is that? All right, the simple gameplay loop. We always come back to what is simple and works. I don't care how much you try to tell me that your game is worth if the gameplay isn't addictive. If you keep pulling control away from me, like it's some Sony third-person action game to tell me a story where I'm now not playing the game, it won't somehow justify you thinking that you can now charge me more now. I am just going to, like many other players, find those games that don't hold my hand constantly, that let me do what I want to do, which is play video games, you know, the whole point of the medium in the first place. Like, why do you think Dark Souls is so addicting and people replay those games all of the time? Gee, I wonder why. Probably because the story and the cutscenes are minimal, the gameplay loop is fun as hell, and you aren't being held by the hand constantly. If Dark Souls was made by Sony Santa Monica, that's the God of War people, or 343 Industries, which did Halo and Metroid Prime 4, they would have a guy in your ear 24/7 telling you what to do with big waypoints on the map, and every 5 minutes a cutscene would begin and rip control away from you. This is why, like always, returning to basics is always what's best. That's what these indie games are emulating and doing. It's why they're selling. It's why people keep coming back to them time and again. Even look at Super Mario and Zelda. Sure, they have stories, I guess, but why are people honestly playing these games really? It's the gameplay, like always. Although apparently developers do think that Steam has a monopoly on the market either way. As GameIndustry.biz reported here to close out the video, 72% of developers allegedly believe that Steam has an absolute monopoly on PC games, but you need to ask yourself why that is the way that it is too. It's because just like games with really fun gameplay loops that are winning all the time always, it's also why Steam wins so often as well. It's because it's easy to use. It's free to sign up and apply and all that, so no wonder it's doing so well. The less hoops you have to jump through to get to the thing that you want is always going to win in the end no matter what. I mean, I guess you can be jealous if you want to, but in the end, it's just a simple reason why the things that are easy to use and understand always win the biggest. You don't need big fancy graphics. Again, some actor who's like in a movie that you spend millions of dollars to star in your game or cut scenes every 10 minutes. You just need a fun game to play and then make it affordable and have it run well too, obviously. Call of Duty should actually learn from Arc Raiders and success stories like it, because the industry is not only changing from within, but it's obvious that consumer behaviors are too. And how long until that 25% revenue share hits, I don't know, 50, maybe even 60%? I mean, time will tell, but what do you guys think? Is $100 something you can see happen or even be reasonable for like a game day one? Or are these people just out of their minds? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and have a wonderful day.